Hey guys, Steve Welch here with your fact of the day. Have you ever noticed speed limits vary state to state? Well, it wasn't always that way. It used to be set by the federal government. So on January 2nd of 1974, the national highway speed was set to 55 miles per hour. It was done in response to an oil embargo that was imposed on the U.S. and the West due to its support of Israel during the Arab-Israeli conflict. The action was by OPEC, and it caused oil prices to soar, right? So President Nixon and Congress acted to set the national highway speed limit to 55. The thought was that the vehicles would be most efficient at that speed, and if everybody drove 55, it could save gas and you get enough people doing something together. Obviously, you could, save a lot of fuel if that was the case, if it actually saved a lot of fuel. So, they, now I will mention that vehicles built today tend to be a little bit more efficient at around 70 miles an hour, but for back then, it's quite possible 55 was actually the more efficient way to go. So a lot of states pushed back to the law, apparently. So they didn't want the federal government setting the speed limits or anything like that, or keep out of the state type of thing. So why would they comply if they didn't agree with it or they didn't want to, right? Well, the federal government tied funding to it. And anytime you tie funding to something, obviously you get somebody's attention, right? So, so the highways were maintained by the states, but the federal government paid money to the states for the maintenance of the highway, and they basically said, if you don't comply and change your speed limit, then we're not going to give you any of that money. To which the states all ended up complying because it's a lot of money, right? So, so the standards, it didn't do much to save on fuel consumption. Now, some people say that it cut down on fatalities just because people were going slower, so there was actually less fatalities, but that could also be equated into the fact that the cars were built safer. And every time that technology advances, you get things like airbags, you get things like anti-lock brakes, you get things that come up with the vehicle that are up in technology. Once that happens, obviously it makes the car safer, which could also reduce fatalities, of course, as well. So the government even tried to promote the speed limit compliance, which they had a 55 Saves Lives campaign that was mostly ineffective from what it sounds like. So one thing that did help on the fuel crunch was the Japanese vehicles that ended up coming in. They were small, they were very tiny, very light, but got really good fuel economy. Americans had kind of gotten stuck on some of the land yachts and things like that got yardage instead of mileage, right? But the 8 miles, 10 miles, 15 miles a gallon, and that was in a sedan, not a truck. So we had kind of gotten used to that kind of stuff, but yeah, so so some of the Japanese cars come in and people are like, well, let me buy one of them because obviously I can save gas that way, and the speed limit really didn't matter, right? So when did it end and why? In 1987, Congress authorized the states to reset the speed limits within their own borders, right? So that's why you can see that you cross the state lines, and it could be the same road could be 65 in one state and 75 in the next, right? So there's several ways that could make some sense, right? So, but the law was not officially repealed until November 28th of 1995. So that's the speed that they worked at that with, right? So, so now speed limits go from 55 to 80, depending on where you're at, the roadway location. And I'll show you a chart as we're talking here that shows exactly where different speed limits are. Something good to look at, but definitely. Did you know that the speed limit used to be set by the federal government at 55 miles per hour? If you did, great, give us a thumbs up. If not, give us a thumbs up anyway. But definitely helping to make you just a little bit smarter than you were yesterday. Steve Welch, your fact of the day. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.